Hello. This is a continuation of my summary of my analysis of how the USA is starting a new Cold War with Russia. I may not do a very good job. I'm not feeling very well. The CIA's been whacking me with toxic mold and screwing with my CPAP machine, so my body's not doing too well, and I can't think very well. But I'll try to struggle through this. I got to get it done. Uh, we've been focusing on the Industrial Revolution and trying to understand how the Industrial Revolution made warfare so profitable. And to better understand this, we're breaking up the Industrial Revolution into 8 stages. First stage is machine manufacturing of textiles. Second stage is use of machines in agriculture, right? And then we talked about the impact of machines in printing and how that made mass media possible and how that opened up greater possibilities for propaganda used in patriotism and then communist propaganda, both of which had big impacts on 20th century wars. And then the third stage of the Industrial Revolution is the advent of steam engines and their application in both powering machines and also in mechanized transportation, which had huge impact on economics, largely shifting from pure mercantilism in a narrow sense to colonialism, and that leading to colonial competition, and that resulting in the formation of autark trading blocs, which then were antagonistic and went to war, resulting in really three main wars: World War One, World War Two, and it played a role in the Cold War. Fourth stage was machine manufacture of armaments, which made the military-industrial complex possible. But the military-industrial complex did not emerge until World War One. All right. And it played machine manufactured arms played a role in the Civil War, but the key effect of the Civil War was unleashing a Western expansion economics for the United States. So, Western expansion economics was the economic engine for the United States after the Civil War. All right. Uh, and then I briefly touched upon the fifth stage of the Industrial Revolution, which many historians call the Second Industrial Revolution. They apply a lot of significance to it, but I do not, because all these elements, none of them attained significant market uh, impact until well into the 20th century. They were insignificant, except for steel, and most of the steel went into railroads. Uh, okay, so Western expansion economics was a big economic engine at the time. It was a big money maker at the time. All right. Okay. With World War One, a new big money maker is going to be military industry. All right. So then we talked about the Panic of 1893 and the economic depression that lasted 6 years, 93 to 99, and this drove U.S. Demand for overseas expansion of markets, especially into Asia. And this was the background behind the U.S. Spanish-American War. Okay, I'm tired. All right, so now we're going to look at a period of between like 1873 to uh, about 1811 or so, and uh, in the USA during this time, Western expansion drove economic growth, but in three boom and bust cycles. I guess I'll show you real quick again. Find it. That's small. Here's a better diagram of it. All right, so here's the three cycles. Boom, railroads tank. economy tanks. Railroads boom, economy does great. Railroads tank, depression, economy tanks. Railroads boom, railroads tank, then the economy tanks. It's pretty damn strong correlation there. Not the only factor. I explained it with many other factors. Uh, okay, so this is my analysis of the crash of 1893 and the depression. Right? It was a very elegant and sophisticated analysis. I'm having trouble talking. Fucking CIA, fucking me up. All right. Okay. Now, during this period in Europe, it was a time called the Long Depression. European economies were depressed. Uh, that created increased need for colonial expansion because the economic engine was industrial growth, supported by colonial expansion. So that increased demand for colonial expansion, for economic growth, and with economic growth, you get more wealth, and from their wealth, national wealth, you use that to build military power. So that has an effect upon security or insecurity, and all of this led to increased colonial competition and economic nationalism of that era. That also resulted in jingoism. This whole thing went together: economic colonial competition, economic nationalism, jingoism, competition for trade, right? And all this led to World War One. Were part of the factors. I'll give you a better analysis of World War One a little later. Uh, okay, so World War One, we'll talk about it real briefly here. World War One, it pulled the U.S. out of an economic depression. The U.S. economy was depressed going into World War One. The war did wonders in stimulating the economy. Uh, World War One brought the realization of the vast amount of wealth that can be made from war industries. Uh, and USA flipped from a debtor nation to a creditor nation. The World Financing Center shifted from London to New York. The big British and French debt to USA got the British and French to impose war reparations on Germans, and those war reparations were seen as the cause for their poverty, their desperate poverty and suffering. So it created a lot of hatred and helped fuel the rise of Hitler, his popularity, and the Nazi Party, and of course that led to World War II. So it all kind of fit together here, and then all the money that flooded in from the war to USA. Well, with all that money, a lot of that went into capital export. So there's increased capital export to third world countries, and that increased U.S. neo-colonial control of foreign resources and foreign economies, right? Which then required U.S. military intervention when the natives got pissed off, right? Rise of U.S. military-industrial complex. Now, this is the key thing here: the rise of the U.S. military-industrial complex. For the remainder of this analysis, my right heart is hurting. Fucking CIA. It's the new big. So military industrial complex, that became the new big money maker. Remember how Western expansion railroads were the big money maker? Harriman was involved in railroads. I showed you all his railroads. His son became the centerpiece of the military industrial complex, Averill Harriman, right? Um, and then I'm going to show you how the bonesmen were critical to the military industrial complex. All right. So and then I want you to kind of recall how the economics of warfare evolved from classic empires to mercantilism, to colonial, and then to military-industrial complex. Right now, I will wait until Note 22 to show you the many ways that money can be made off of war. That's when I get to the Iraq invasion war, right? I'll wait to show you, like, there's so many ways money is made off of war. All right, so um, the this lesson is pretty much a I would say a throwaway lesson. Um, I just want to give you some idea of what caused World War One, right? And then I want to give you the idea of what were the implications or effects of World War One, right? But but I'm not going to go uh, into World War One, you know, uh, into the military-industrial complex as of yet. I can't think. All right, so the reason why I say this is kind of a throwaway lesson is I did not place too much importance upon it, so I did no research for this. I did no work for it. All I did was jot down uh, uh, knowledge I had off the top of my head. So that all this comes straight off the top of my head. All right, and I do have a pretty good memory, although my brain is not working very well right now for uh, reasons of my CPAP is killing me, and I'm being hit with toxic mold. And all right, so a big part of the background behind the cause of World War One was the fierce colonial competition raging in the latter part of the 19th century. By the end of the 19th century, the major European nations were all fighting each other, scrambling for colonial empires. And the reason why was the whole thing was uh, the economic engine was expansion of industries in the home country supported by colonies overseas. For example, here's Great Britain. They led the Industrial Revolution, and they did so by using the resources they got in their colonies. These are all British colonies, right? And they also used them as markets for export. And that formed autarkic trading bloc, a trading bloc between the home country and the colonies, right? Self-sustaining, right? But competitive with other trading blocs. Other nations had their home industries with their colonies, right? And as the economy creates wealth, and wealth is the basis of military power, that competition led to insecurity between nations, right? Okay, so I want to just show you how divided up the world was already in colonies. All right, so this were originally British colonies here in North America until we defeated them in the Revolutionary War. This was French colony. Spain had Western North America, and then pretty much all of South America, with Portugal holding Brazil. There was British, Dutch, and French pieces here. Um, and in Africa, French dominated West Africa. Uh, this is British here. Was that Angola? And then Germany got some pieces here late, and these were pretty much worthless throwaways, right? Very poor in resources. Belgian Congo was very rich in resources. This is like British had a line coming down here, all the way through here. Here's East Africa. French had this little piece over here, Um, a latecomer was Italy, and they took this Libya here. Libya was worthless until they discovered oil in 1959. They discovered oil. That was late though. French had Madagascar. British had all these. Uh, uh, that's like Yemen there, and United Arab Emirates in there, and then they pretty much dominated Persia. You could say Persia was a colony of theirs, a neo-colonial relationship there, and then India. Pakistan area, and then Burma, and then they had Malaysia, right? And they had Australia. They had the southeastern part of New Guinea, and they had New Zealand, right? Dutch had East Indies, USA. Well, first Spain, then USA took Philippines from Spain. French had Indochina. French also got the Levant after World War One. British and French made a treaty during World War One, saying, "Hey, when we win this war, we'll split up the Middle East, and the French would get the Levant, and the British would get everything south." The French kind of got screwed because all the oil was in Iraq and Iran. Syria didn't have that much oil, and Russia was moving hard into Manchuria, Korea, and Liaodong. Germany was moving into Shantung, right? And then Japan came in after the Russo-Japanese War and took over Russia's dominance in this area here, right? And Germany was making a big push into Latin America, right? The largest trading partner with Latin America was Great Britain since the Napoleonic Wars. Remember the continental system and the economic warfare they waged on each other, England versus Napoleon's Europe, right? Well, England turned to Latin America, and everything it lost in European trade, it gained with Latin American trade. And so Britain was a dominant trading partner with Latin America and a dominant investor in Latin America. But by around the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, right, Germany came to rival Great Britain in investment amounts. So Germany was, it's little known, but Germany was moving hard into Latin America, right, with greater investment than the United States. So that was a key competition because we wanted that for ourselves. As you recall, we had the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 and said, "Hey, Europeans, you stay out." Right? This is our turf now. All right. So that's kind of like an overview of how throughout the world, European nations were racing to carve up all the world for their own, forming their autarkic little trading blocks amongst themselves. All right. So here are a sample of key colonial competition, different spheres. I break it up into 7: Middle East, Balkans, Africa, Latin America, Pacific Islands, Asia, and I add Caribbean, although I haven't done any research on the Caribbean yet. I just read a little bit, and my memory's not very well formed on it. So I have to do a lot of research here, but I'm not going to because I don't want to waste the time right now, and I'm having some health issues right now. All right, so Middle East. What I can say is I have done no research for this. This is all off the top of my head. However, I can fairly safely guarantee the accuracy of this. All right. I know my brain is very good at retaining facts accurately. However, which is not the case for most people. I find most people just distort the crap out of things in their head. And But however, I believe that its true weakness is it's not going to be complete because I haven't done formal research to really dig up everything. All right. So while what I present here is going to be accurate, I can fairly safely guarantee that, even though it's off the top of my head, right? I'm going to say I know it's not going to be nearly complete. There's going to be a lot of things which I have yet to discover. So this is just you could call it a throwaway, take it or leave it, right? Maybe it'll help you see kind of what's going on, all the competitions. It may not be totally inclusive of everything because there could be things that I don't know of going on. All right, so Middle East, Middle East was up for grabs, and of course, the Middle East was important. It had been important historically due to the Silk Road trade, but by the end of the 19th century, the importance shifted to oil. All right, especially for nations like Britain and Germany who did not have oil. Right. So by the end of the 19th century, oil, it became known that oil is going to be the new strategic resource. Right. Why? Because it's going to be the basis of naval power. Right. Not just longer range ships, but faster ships. Right. Whole different engineering. You know, uh, 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 I mean, for one thing, oil has twice the energy content per volume than coal, right? But another thing is coal requires you to shovel in, lumps of coal into the furnace, so you have an open furnace system. But with oil, you can have an enclosed furnace system, right? Which means you can pressurize the air going in there with what are called forced draft blowers, right? Which burns the fuel cleaner and hotter, more efficient. Higher temperatures means higher pressures, steam pressures, which means faster ships, right? All right. So, which means better naval power, right? Whoever's going to have oil is going to dominate. You better get some oil, or you're gonna be behind, right? And the same applies to maritime commerce, merchant shipping, right? And and that's the bottom line, right? Uh, Build your economy because that pays for everything. All right. So Britain's involvement in the Middle East was in Iran. That was the major source of interest because they discovered oil in 1908. I guess they discovered oil. I thought it was 1906 or 1908. Right. Big Iranian oil discoveries, and this became Britain's source of oil. Uh, Germany, however, had a treaty with Ottoman Empire since the 1880s, right? And they began constructing their Berlin to Baghdad railroad in 1903, and they obtained an oil concession from the Ottomans in 1906. Um, uh, Iraq oil exploration had begun by 1902, right? And they finally discovered oil in 1923. That was too late for Germany because by then they lost World War One and they lost all their Middle East concessions, right? Uh, by at least the early 20th century, the strategic value of oil had been recognized in terms of both naval power and maritime commerce, right? And so this Berlin Baghdad a railroad system here, you can see how it runs from Berlin, right, through like Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, down to the Balkans. That looks like Bulgaria there as Bulgaria, and then across Constantinople, Bosphorus, Dardanelles Straits there, and then into Turkey, and then through Syria here, and into Iraq. Right, there's Baghdad. Right, okay. So this was a major investment by Berlin, and it was going to create an economic corridor here where they would dominate the economics through this corridor, just like China plans to dominate economics with their Belt and Road Initiative. Uh, you control the transportation lines. Uh, you can control the economics. All right, and also this would be a Suez Canal competitor if it reaches to the Persian Gulf. All right, it cuts straight across here to the Persian Gulf. You can load things on ships and then trade with Asia, right through this route. So it's an alternative to the Suez Canal, a competitor to the Suez Canal. Um, Now, I also say here, this was the World War II threat. This is the threat that got us into the war. This is the main reason why. So the threat was Germany in control of not only Russian resources and not only Baku, Caspian oil here, but all of Iranian and Iraqi oil, right? That would have been a major, strategic threat to the United States, right? That would make Germany a commercial powerhouse and hence an industrial powerhouse and hence a military powerhouse, right? That was the major threat in World War II. All right, Balkans. So in the Balkans here, this is the Balkans, right? You had Austrian interest. Of course, you had German interest with their train, their Berlin-Baghdad train. And then you had Russian interest. Traditional Russian interest was coming down this way and seizing control of the mouth of the Black Sea, right? The Bosphorus Dardanelles, the Constantinople, right? That has long been a Russian goal, right? It was a goal in the Crimean War, and that was a key reason why Britain and France joined the fight with Turkey, right? Was to prevent Russian control of the entire Black Sea, with control of that mouth. They already had Crimea as a strategic point in the Black Sea. Uh, so yeah, so Russian, Austrian, German interest, and this became really dicey, especially with the weakness of the Ottoman Empire, leaving a vacuum here, right? It was ripe for the Austrian, Germans, and Russians to move in, right? Uh, German treaty with Ottomans, oil concession, 1906, Berlin Baghdad Railroad, economic corridor, right? Okay, that had to go through the Balkans. Africa, big scramble to cover up Africa in the last quarter of the 19th century, including latecomer Germany. But Germany didn't get much. Remember, I said Germany got some leftover scraps, which were resource poor, right? They didn't really get much. Italy got Libya, but Libya wasn't worth much until they discovered oil way too late. 1959. Okay. So Latin America. Now, I believe Latin America was huge, although it's normally neglected by historians. I think Latin America had huge implications in both World War One and World War Two. All right, the threat of German domination. You know what I said? When Germany got the resources of the Middle East and Baku oil. All right, they could dominate world commercial markets. Right, they could extend into Latin America. Right, competing with the USA in Latin America. Now they may have had trouble invading USA, right, but they could dominate the rest of the world. Uh, all right, so Latin America, when it became dicey, you can go back to the Napoleonic Wars. So here is Europe. Here's Napoleon's empire here, all right, and he has his continental system. He's trying to wage war against Britain, blocking Britain from trading with the continent. But British goods were being smuggled in through Portugal and into Spain. So in 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain. And then with Spain getting its ass kicked by France, right? All of Spain's American colonies, including Portugal's Brazil, they broke away in 1810, right? It was a jailbreak. They all broke away, right? And oh God, I can't think. Um, by 1821, Mexico gained its independence. One of the last countries to gain its independence, 1821. Okay, so they gained their independence, right? And then by 1823, with all of Latin America liberated from Europeans except for British Guyana, Dutch Suriname, and French Guyana. Three tiny little countries here, right? All this was independent. So Monroe steps in 1823 and says, right, he's got his Monroe Doctrine, right? It says, hey, you European colonial powers are out. You stay out. And essentially he's saying this is our turf, right? We own this. Okay. This is, but in reality, British still dominated. British had the lion's share of the trade with Latin America, but we're driving in our stake, claiming it. Uh, okay, so now, so 1823 Monroe Doctrine: no more European colonies except for existing British Guyana, Dutch Suriname, French Guyana. Then 1871, the Franco-Prussian War occurred, and this resulted in the formation of the German nation for the first time. That whole Germanic area was a bunch of fragmented Germanic principalities, you know, uh, whatever, Bavaria, Saxony, Prussia, all those little independent. Now they all joined together to form a German nation. So this was a big game changer. The formation of a Central European, dominant power here. With most of the colonial world carved out and claimed, there was little left for ambitious newcomer Germany. Right, there were slim pickings left. I mean, 1871 is late. The colonial race has been going on for a long time. There's not much left. You know, they got some worthless pieces in Africa. They're trying to get some Pacific islands, right? They're trying to get Shantung Peninsula, right? But that's about it, right? Their big hope was in Latin America, because Latin America was kept pristine by the Monroe Doctrine, right? And uh, 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 you know, in strict interpretation of the Monroe Doctrine, if you read the Monroe Doctrine, he's focusing on European colonialism in Latin America. No more of that, right? Well, Germany wasn't doing colonialism; they're doing neo-colonialism. They weren't coming in and becoming the governing administrators, military rule, right? They're coming in commercially with multinational corporations, with planting people, with investment, right? That's the same thing. That's the same way America wanted to dominate Latin America, right? And so by the early 20th century, German investment was nearly equal to British investment. Remember, we said the British dominated Latin American trade since the Napoleonic Wars. Well, Germany came to rival Great Britain and surpassed the United States in volume of investment. Well, that was no good for the United States, right? The United States wanted, they wanted this for themselves. That was the Monroe Doctrine, right? But now you got Germany moving in. So that was one of the clear threats to United States, posed by Germany. All right. So Germany moved hard into Africa. Not much there though. Balkans. They're trying to get their Berlin-Baghdad railroad set up, right? And then Middle East, right? Oil, Ottoman Empire oil. Iraq was part of the Ottoman Empire. All right. Asia, and Asia, there's Shantung Peninsula, Pacific Islands, right? And it turns out that U.S. competed with Germany over Pacific Islands and Latin America, right? Big competition with the United States. So Latin America was an opportune German target because it had largely been protected by the Monroe Doctrine. German business interests moved in, not with colonialism, but more with neo-colonial domination through multinational corporations. In the same manner, USA planned to dominate with neo-colonialism, right? So, neo-colonialism financially is no different from colonialism, right? The only difference is you don't set up official government, civil military control there, right? You rule through a dictator you prop up or a king, right? Uh, right. You use that dictator king as a puppet. UK had dominated Latin American trade since the French Revolutionary Wars. By late 19th century, UK influence was waning, and they lost Fort Tussle with the USA. Right, UK still had the largest investment. Was still the largest LA and Latin American investor, but Germany almost was equal. right? Germany was coming on strong, and I believe that on the eve of World War One, the key competition for supremacy in Latin America was lining up to be between USA and Germany, right? USA wants first dibs on Latin America resource development and controlling their economies. All right. Okay. So here's the Monroe Doctrine: no more European colonization in Latin America. And when Monroe issued this in 1823, that included uh, Spanish Mexico. Spanish Mexico was actually all this roughly. I hand drew this in. It's not exact. I think it kind of comes more like this and then comes down. Right, that corner. I think that was a debatable corner as far as I recall. Right, so that this was Mexico. This is what we took away from Mexico in the Mexican-American War, and then all this was Spanish, and this was Brazil. They all kind of went together, all the way down to here. Right, I think Dutch had Cape Horn for a while. British had Falklands. Um, all right. All right. So, yeah, Europeans out, you stay out. This is our backyard. This is our turf. And there was a push against Great Britain in 1895. 1895, we had tussles with Great Britain in Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Brazil. Right? It was 1894 and 95 actually. Um, Then in 1904, you had the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, and that was an extension that said, all right, not only is this our backyard, but the USA reserves the right to intervene with military force at any time, anywhere in Latin America to protect our overseas interests. And this helped justify the many banana wars, uh, which were in support for the multinational corporations controlling Latin American resources and economies. All right, Pacific Islands. So in 1898, Spain was weak and decrepit. It was another sick man of Europe. All right, it was easy pickings with the Spanish-American War. USA took the Philippines, Guam, Wake, annexed Hawaii, issued open door policy, and fought against Germany to establish American Samoa. All right. U.S. key competitor was Germany, given Mahan's strategy and overlapping lines of U.S. German interests, right? And then after World War One, with Germany's defeat, all their islands were given to Japan, called the Mandate Islands, right? And I'll show you all this. Okay, so here are a lot of the Pacific Islands in play, right? When you see blue, this is all British. All right, British. This is British Australia. British southern part here of New Guinea was British. British, British, British. New Zealand's British. Okay. Green is French, 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 French. Now look at Germany. Germany's way up here, right? The only thing down here is Samoa. So we competed with Germany over Samoa, and then we fought with them, and then kind of split. We got American Samoa here after that battle, and then Mahan's plan was for a line of islands to serve as coaling stations to access the Asian markets, right? Refuel, rest, repair. Hawaii, Midway, Wake, Guam, Philippines, right? Now that line runs roughly overlapping German interests. So German interests, other than Samoa down here, was in eastern New Guinea, which is like this northeastern part here, and these are Bismarck Islands, and then this is the Mariana Islands, and all these I kind of forget the names, but I know they're like the Marshalls, Carolines, and Gilberts. all in here, right? I forget which one's which. I always forget which. I got to get a better way of memorizing which one's which. But yeah, the Marshalls, Gilberts, and Carolines are in this area here. All right. So those were all German interests. Now, after World War One ended and Germany was defeated, all these islands, see this like this little kind of sideways U-shaped thing here, right? Right. This went to Japan. It was mandated to Japan. All right, given to Japan, and that's why they're called the Mandate Islands. All right, and it had implications in World War II because this became part of Japan's defensive perimeter. Right, so they got this already, and their main resource to defend would become the oil in the Dutch East Indies, in Borneo especially. Right, Dutch East Indies, oil. Right, so you know they had a lot. They had a lot already, right? They had to take the Philippines. They had to take the rest of New Guinea, right? They had trouble here. They actually had a lot of trouble taking southern New Guinea here, Port Moresby. The Battle of the Coral Sea was important in preventing them from making amphibious landing in Port Moresby, right? Down south here. That's British, right? So they had to try to go from the north over here. But this line here is very steep, rugged, treacherous mountains. And they literally starved. The Japanese starved trying to get over that. Anyway, that's off to the side. Asia. European interest in Asia began with the Gama's route. As far as colonization of Asia, began with the Gama's route around South Africa to Asia. And then European colonialism swiftly moved in. First the Portuguese, then the Dutch, British, French. Right, and they came to dominate all this area. Dutch East Indies down here. This is French, China, British India, Burma, and Malaysia down here. Canton area was British. This shows Yangtze as British, but Yangtze Valley was the British kept it open for international trade, right? Even though you can say the British dominated, right? Okay, so this was Russian interest. This was German interest, Shantung Peninsula. They would get the whole Shantung Peninsula, not the southern part only. Russia would get Manchuria, Korea, Liaodong, but then Japan would come in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904, take that from Russia. All right. So, and then, so Europeans swiftly moved in. And then I'm going to focus on Japan now. Between 1854 to 1861, Japan was forced to sign unequal treaties with USA, Britain, Netherlands, France, Russia, Prussia. Right? They're all forcing treaties down their throat. Right? Japan's being squeezed. Japan's being pressured. Japan's being pried open. Right? And then in 1863-64, Japan was resoundingly defeated by a combined U.S., UK, Dutch, and French forces in the Shimonoseki campaign, right? So Japan's pretty threatened, right? They're looking to be gobbled up by Europeans. So threatened with domination by, quote, Western powers, Japan radically westernized their country to meet the Western threat. So the Japanese said, these Western powers are threatening to gobble us up and dominate us. Well, the only way we can prevent that is if we become just as Western as they are, right? And, okay. All right. So that resulted in the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration was not just restoration of the empire. The Meiji Restoration was total revamping of their politics, their economy, their whole society, westernizing it in every damn way, right? To build strength, to defend against the Western powers. Become just as Western as they, to defend against the Western powers, right? So Japan quickly industrialized, becoming an exporter of manufactured goods, largely textiles to other Asian nations, right? And as they industrialized, they allowed their population to grow. Japan also westernized and modernized its military. And with the Sino-Japanese War of 1894, Japan proved itself to be an imperial contender to dominate Asia, or gobble up Asian colonies, right? With the advantage of short lines of communication. I mean, right here, look how close they are to Korea, right, to China, Formosa, right? Uh, okay. Let's see here. And, that was a weakness for the Europeans. They had long lines of communication stretching back to Europe. Okay. Japan's imperial rise threatened European colonial ambitions, so Germany, Russia, France ganged up on Japan in the Triple Alliance and forced Japan to give up all its gains. So with the Sino-Japanese War, China versus Japan, China gained Liaodong Peninsula. They liberated Korea, which meant they became the dominant influence in Korea, and they gained Formosa, and they gained a couple other islands between Formosa and Japan, somewhere in here. I don't know where. Smaller islands. Uh, okay, and the Europeans forced Japan to give it all up, right? And they moved in. So they rushed into the vacuum so that Japan doesn't come back. So Russia moved in here. Germany pushed hard into the Shantung Peninsula, right? France extended into this area here, right? Britain extended into the Canton area here, right north of Hong Kong. They also took an island over here. What the hell's that island? I keep forgetting its name. It's southwest of Hong Kong Island. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, Russia in Manchuria, Liaodong, Korea, Germany in Shantung, Britain and France also made gains in southern China. U.S. feared being locked out of the China market when USA was suffering its worst depression up at that time, second only to the Great Depression. And it was widely believed by politicians, economists, business leaders, newspapers, that right, editors, that economic salvation lay in increased exports of the U.S. manufactured goods to Asia, specifically China. Then you had Mahan's brilliant strategy was implemented effectively in the Spanish-American War. The foundation for U.S. expansion into Asia was laid, however, 40 years earlier by Secretary of State Seward. And Seward's a guy I respect too because he was a pretty sharp guy. Uh, Now, Caribbean, I'm not going to say much about the Caribbean because honestly, I don't know the details. I know that Europeans, from reading this and that, I know that Europeans have long been ambitious over there. Shortly after British and Dutch established their East Indies companies, they established their West Indies companies. France got heavily involved in you're right. Uh, 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 Germany had interest in the Caribbean, right? So there were European, interests leading up to the Spanish-American War, World War One, right? I believe it had an impact on it, but honestly, I don't know enough about it. I say here, don't know enough, needs research, but I'm not going to invest time right now. Plus, I'm feeling kind of sick. I'm having trouble thinking. So within these seven spheres, of colonial competition, our overall greatest competitor was Germany, more than UK or France. And I believe that was the chief reason why we fought with the Allies, France and Britain, against Germany in World War One, right? You know, you can't think of Germany as being Nazi Germany because it wasn't back then, right? You know, Germany was no worse or no better than Britain, France, right? They're all scumbags doing their colonial expansion, right? So I think it was our own self interest aligned us against Germany because we had mutually competing interests in the Pacific, in Latin America, and Germany was moving to dominate the Shantung Peninsula here in Asia, right? Plus, you could say that Germany posed a strategic threat if they can get their access to Middle East oil. All right, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and talk about causes of World War One. I'm taking a break because I'm feeling kind of sick. So that is a key competition. Again, take this with a grain of salt. All this comes straight off the top of my head. All right, I didn't do any research for this. All right, but clearly there's competition around the world. Competition in the Middle East, in the Balkans, in Africa, in Latin America, in Pacific Islands, in Asia, and in the Caribbean.